League of Legends has a snowballing problem. I don't think anyone disagrees with this statement. In fact, it's been getting progressively worse and worse over the years to the point where it's affecting every rank from Challenger all the way to Bronze. I made a video a few weeks back talking about the League community's rising toxicity, and one of the factors that influenced this was how games can become hopeless even after one bad fight, which prompts many players to give up and stop trying even though there might be a chance they can win. By the way, there usually always is. So that prompted me to make a video addressing why snowballing in League of Legends has gone out of control. I'm gonna be breaking down as many things as I can remember that changed over the past few years that brought the game to the GG FF15 state it's in. Before we get started though, we need to talk about a few metrics. The first is game time. In 2015, when I first joined the game, the average solo queue game time was 30 to 35 minutes. 6 years later, in Season 11, the average game time is 25 to 30 minutes, assuming both graphs account for games that end in surrender. You might think to yourself 5 minutes isn't really that much of a difference, but remember, in League of Legends, 5 minutes is a long time. It takes 5 minutes for an inhibitor to respawn after being destroyed, 5 minutes for the next Baron or Dragon to spawn after being secured, Flash has a base 5-minute cooldown, a lot can happen in a League game within 5 minutes, and the fact that the average game time has gone down 15% is significant considering how many games are played per year across all servers. Then there's a few more things. League of Graphs has a section on their website that records win rate stats based on conditions, and they collect this data worldwide. Whichever team that secures first blood has close to a 60% chance of winning games. So simply getting the first kill increases your odds from a 50-50 to a 60-40. Securing the first dragon is about 63%. If your team manages to get the first tower, you're up to 71%. Just the first tower. By 20 minutes, whichever team gets their hands on Baron first has over an 80% chance of winning the game. Of course, these are just statistics. There's a lot more nuance and circumstance that come into play from game to game, like what if your team secures first blood and first tower but the enemy team secures first Baron, or some other combination of objectives. That being said, it's important to discussing snowballing in League of Legends. On average, first bloods take place between the 3 to 5 minute mark. People are pretty antsy to get kills. Most of the time, first tower is taken while turret plates are still active. So by 12 minutes, the red or blue team is already in a position where they should theoretically be able to win the game. It's entirely possible for a match to be decided before the laning phase even ends. That's pretty insane. Anyway, while there's dozens of tiny little things added and changed within the game, I found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 big things in particular that really sped up the process. So let's go through one at a time. The most noteworthy problem, I would say, is the sheer amount of extra gold added to the game, especially in the laning phase. Early game gold generation has been rapidly accelerated thanks to turret plates, which ironically were put in place to prevent snowballing from happening too quickly by making tier 1 towers really durable, but they also wanted to incentivize proactivity in the laning phase by giving players a reason to be aggressive, so they rewarded you with gold every time you were able to take out a plate. In terms of stopping people from getting first tower by 6 minutes, that did the trick. But what also ended up happening was it increased the potential lead a champion could attain during the laning phase. Each plate gives 160 gold, which means a team can acquire up to 2400 extra gold if all plates are taken before 14 minutes, on top of the tower rewards themselves and the first tower bonus. All this put in place means you could gain a 4,000 to 5,000 gold advantage before 15 minutes. By that point, assuming the winning team isn't full of complete idiots, they have far more combat pressure than the losing team is able to handle. Even though tower plates do slow down the rate at which you can destroy tier 1 towers, it's not by much. It's not uncommon for a top laner with Iron Spike Whip or a mid laner with Lost Chapter to take the first 3 or 4 plates before 10 minutes, especially if they have Demolish. That's a lot of friggin' money you're able to get without having to kill your lane opponent. Merely forcing them to recall on a bad wave is a huge win because 2 plates gives you more gold than a kill. The second most influential factor would have to be runes, which are far stronger and give champions such a boost in combat stats that didn't exist before. Back in the old days, all runes did were give you more starting stats like attack damage, attack speed, ability power, and such. Masteries were also more or less the same. We did have Keystone Masteries back in Season 7, but they were nowhere near as overtuned as they are now. These days, runes can completely change your gameplay, with some of them providing so much value in combat or mobility. Keystones like Lethal Tempo can give you more gold value in attack speed than an entire item, not even counting the fact that you can break past the 2.5 cap. Conqueror is 36 attack damage or 60 ability power and 9% Omnivamp. Electrocute is a huge amount of burst damage that almost equals an ability cast. Additionally, there are runes that give champions really amazing tempo. Predator, Relentless Hunter, Nimbus Cloak, Celerity, Water Walking, others that provide you stats that you'd only be able to get by buying items like Tenacity, Lifesteal, and even Omnivamp. These increases in stats, mobility, utility, DPS, and burst damage were not here several years before, at least not to the same extent. I do understand why Riot wanted to make runes feel more than just an afterthought since, like I said, what set of runes you take into a match can fundamentally alter your playstyle. Renekton, for example, has two choices. He can go press the attack for full burst, or Conqueror if he wants to be more scrappy in fights. Vladimir can take Electrocute if he's looking to one-shot someone, or Phase Rush so he can kite people out. Nunu might take Aftershock for defense, or Phase Rush for stick potential. Runes Reforged has given us a lot of really awesome gameplay elements, and I'd much rather prefer this over the old system since it actually means something, but a consequence to giving runes more impact is that it amplifies a champion's ability to snowball. The more kills you get, the sooner you get magical footwear. If you have Demolish and win lane, you can take down the enemy tower very quickly. Scoring takedowns on multiple members of the enemy team gives you stacks on the 4 Bounty Hunter runes, as well as sooner completion from the Legend series. All of these runes respond to gaining advantage, and trust me when I say they do add up. Third, items power spike far more when combined than as individual components, since many of them have passives and or actives that easily outstrip any amount of attack damage, ability power, armor, what have you. Season 11 brought a ton of really cool and fun items to the shop, but mythic items are incredibly gold efficient because their properties drastically shift what a champion can do in a fight. Gore Drinker is a massive heal if it strikes multiple champions at low health. Prowler's Claw, Rocket Belt, and Gale Force are all dashes. Everfrost is an AoE root on an item. Riftmaker's true damage, things like that. Even though most mythics cost like 3,000 to 3,400 gold, their real value could be as high as 5,000 to 6,000 because you cannot put a price on utility like that. Furthermore, Riot changed the way items work so that your first 2 or 3 completed purchases are much more meaningful, such as the mythics. Almost every champion in the game wants to buy a mythic item first because it enhances or rounds out their playstyle. AD carries usually had to wait until their 3rd or 4th item before finally turning into living machine guns. Both Kraken Slayer, Gale Force, and Immortal Shield Bow, they now have some agency in the mid-game. Essentially, everyone now has a 1-item power spike as opposed to the 2 or 3 they would need before. Items also got a lot cheaper across the board. Completed items used to cost 36 to 3,800 gold, but now they're only around 3,000. They don't provide the same amount of raw stats, mind you, but again, it's not the stats you care about, it's the passive and or active effects. Fourth, objectives are much easier to get and provide way more value to the team. Riftherald can take up to 3 towers if met with no resistance, or she can wipe out 2 tower plates instantly. Dragon Souls can be obtained as early as 25 minutes, and since those are permanent buffs, it gives you a permanent advantage. Before, you had to get 5 dragons to get the maximum buff, and each one wasn't really that important. In fact, it was super rare for you to get the 5th dragon buff because it wouldn't show up until like 36 minutes. Baron used to be an extremely difficult epic monster that would usually be unsafe to secure until around 30 minutes because it did too much damage, it was too tanky, so it took a while to beat. Now, you can see teams shredding Baron to pieces right as it spawns at 20 minutes. Baron-empowered minions do so much damage to towers, especially the cannon minion who can attack from outside of range. Let's also not forget the Elder Dragon, effectively making it so whichever team got it would insta-win any fight. Elder Drake essentially makes it impossible for most games to go past 35 minutes, because reducing the max HP of the entire enemy team by 25% puts them at such an overwhelming disadvantage that teamfights with Elder often end in hard 5-for-0 or 5-for-1 aces. Fifth, jungle and support. The roles with the most roaming and playmaking potential have been given a lot more gold and experience generation. Before, they would be the poorest members on their team by like a full item or even 2, so they wouldn't really be able to control much of the game. Now, junglers are on par with solo laners when it comes to gold generation and experience, which makes them a far more dangerous threat when they go for ganks or fights. That's how the whole jungle diff meme started. In the beginning of Season 11, they were so overtuned that you could see junglers up 2 levels on their solo laners by 20 minutes, when back in Season 4, they would constantly be down 2 levels on their solos by 20 minutes. It's not as bad anymore, but you get what I mean. Supports also have some of the most gold efficient items in the game, and the cheapest, which means they have satisfying first, second, and third item purchases that can help them gain control of the entire map. There's also a smaller change that I want to talk about. The removal of Sightstone and purchasable stealth wards. It's much easier to remove vision than it is to place it in League because we can't buy wards anymore except for control wards, meaning the only person on the team who can place down multiple wards in the mid game is the support, and when you're behind, vision control is that much more important. You need to know where the enemy team is, otherwise you'll forever be unable to go through your own jungle or push out a lane without risking your life. junglers used to be able to buy an item called Tracker's Knife, which gave them wards to use. But now with that gone, non-support champions can only use trinkets or control wards, and the former can easily be shut down by an Oracle Lens. It's not any one of these aspects individually that made snowballing so problematic, rather how they can all pile on top of each other. Think about it. Let's say you're a top laner and you get solo killed. You earn about half a level's worth of experience for a solo kill, which already puts you at a huge disadvantage. But then you also lose 300 gold. Chances are the enemy can shove the wave into your tower, so you lose 1 or 2 waves without teleport, and then you lose 2 or 3 tower plates. So one mistake in the laning phase can set you back as high as 800 gold plus a full level. There's very few champions who can come back from that far behind if the enemy laner is competent enough to push their lead. Additionally, loss of map pressure means the enemy jungler can now invade top or bot side since they have the numbers advantage, so any mistakes laners make can bleed into their own jungler and vice versa. If your jungler gets invaded and killed, the top and mid or mid and bot laners now have to account for the fact that their name might be on the death note too, and there goes their pressure as well. In the early game, you have very little vision to place around the map aside from Scuttle Crab. That is an element of snowballing that not many people think about: pressure. I know I spent most of the video so far talking about gold value since, more items, more levels means more stats, and more stats equals win. But pressure can be just as, if not more important, than how many items or levels you have. When a champion is dead, any amount of pressure they have is completely off the map. You can be a level 18 6-item Kha'Zix by 20 minutes, but if you get caught out and shut down, you do not matter for however long your death timer is. It doesn't matter how fed you are or how weak you are. If you are dead, whatever attacks, utility, or pressure you have to offer is null and void. Now you might think to yourself, I know that already, that's why you shouldn't get caught in the late game because death timers are a full minute long. But what if I told you that deaths in the early game are actually more punishing than deaths in the late game? Hear me out. In the early game, everyone is level 1 and has only 500 gold to spend. It doesn't matter if you're someone with a strong level 1 like Riven, Darius, and Kha'Zix, or a weak level 1 like Vladimir, Kiana, and Sona. The difference in strength between all champions is really small, but that's all the more reason why being down a member can be such a huge issue. When you're a full build Kai'Sa, you can probably pull off a clutch 1v3 outplay even without your support if you're good. Or if you're a level 18 Yone, you might be able to solo 1v5 pen to kill the enemy team. But what if you were a level 3 Kai'Sa or a level 3 Yone? You obviously don't have the DPS, cooldowns, and stuff to pull that off. Since you have no items, no levels, or anything at the start, you're more vulnerable in the early game to a game of numbers than in the late game when it comes down to execution. Your pressure is super low, but so is your opponent, putting you both on a level playing field. One other thing I think is funny to note is that game times in professional play have actually increased. You may have noticed there's a growing number of games that run as long as 40 minutes. A theory I have behind that is because of how punishing even one mistake can be. So teams are averse to gaining a lead through teamfights and skirmishes and would much rather do it through objectives like Dragon, Baron, and whatnot, since essentially whichever team has better objective control wins the game. Kills are too risky for the payoff. I actually stopped watching pro play because I got so tired of how little teams would fight since they just want to play it safe. I don't blame them, it's just boring. But there you have it. These are some of the many cases to why it feels like games are so coin flippy and why there's a growing number of players who just give up after getting solo killed or having a bad skirmish. Does that mean a game is unwinnable if you fall behind early? Absolutely not. Technically speaking, there's always a chance you can win because people throw all the time, even in high elo. But not gonna lie, there are so many games where it feels like you lose before you even get a chance to play. What do you guys think? Do you side with the school of thought that snowballing has gone too far, or do you believe people are overreacting and the game is the same as it's always been? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, a rating would be much appreciated. Don't forget to sub to the channel for more content like this. Consider following me on my socials and joining my Discord server if you'd like. And lastly, check out my previous discussion videos if you haven't yet. But thanks so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you again soon. Take care.